This new PvE Titan build gives you one special hammer. I mean, really. This hammer will weaken enemies, stack damage buffs with other abilities, give you infinite elemental wells that benefit you with multiple things, cause some serious damage, trigger health regen, make your solar weapons deal more DPS, and a bunch more things. The best part about this build is that you get infinite throwing hammers, and you can use it in master activities whilst 30 under the recommended power. More info on this soon, but before we get into the video, be sure to check out my sponsor over at Awaya to get your hands on some cheap silver using my code DIVIDE at checkout for some of those sweet, new, awesome Eververse cosmetics. And now guys, let's start. Rate, comment, sub, share, intro. Now briefly, as always, if you enjoy these videos and you want to see more, there is a new playlist with more top fun builds to use in Destiny 2 Season 15, see that link below. So with this build, we will be using the Middle-Tree Sunbreaker subclass, which we'll get to shortly, and the reason for that is actually for a few things. Firstly, that subclass did get a slight buff this season, so those hammers now have increased damage against PvE combatants by 50%, whilst also giving you up to 10 seconds to go pick up that hammer, which is a really big thing when it comes to endgame content, because you need that time to go pick it up without getting yourself killed in the process by rushing. The second thing is, we now have new artifact mods as well as new elemental well mods that benefit the subclass a lot more too. But here is your overview of how this build works and how you'll use it in all types of content. Firstly, you'll run into some adds, ideally a group, and get a grenade kill. This will trigger Roaring Flames ×1 as well as an empowering buff, making your hammer melee ability deal enough damage to kill any minor add regardless of it being the master minor add whilst underpowered. And killing that add with the melee will stack up those previous buffs to ×2, giving you more damage with your abilities as well as dropping a solar elemental well. Picking up that well will give you 2 charge light stacks. On top of this, you'll get solar weapon damage increased by 25%, stacking with other buffs and debuffs. Picking that hammer back up each time also triggers health regeneration. And from here, you'll go on a rampage killing adds with hammers and grenades to chain up that increasing ability damage, and once you're ready for boss or champion DPS, throw literally everything you got at them and deal your DPS using your solar weapons. Ideally a Lament, which will have Lucent Blade and Font of Might stacked buffs for crazy DPS. Not to mention that those abilities are doing extra DPS as well as weakening champions using a new artifact mod for a further damage increase. With this setup, you'll never really run out of hammers as long as you pick those back up, and I forgot to mention, you can also stun overloads with the hammers as well, which also weakens them at the same time. Just remember to pick up those hammers before doing DPS so you can use it again, otherwise you'll be waiting for it to come back, and without those hammers, the build will not really work effectively. A quick tip here as well that I've noticed, if you do pick up the hammer whilst you have the sword equipped, it won't actually give you the hammer back, just be aware of that, because that has kind of screwed things over for me quite a lot as well. Now if you're taking this into master activities whilst underpowered, it will be difficult to survive, so I'd recommend using this up to master activities including master, but I wouldn't go in there underpowered. Otherwise you will need at least 1 kill with an ability first to start the chain of insta-kill hammers, but it will be hard to achieve due to the fact that you need to run in and pick up that hammer when adds can kill you almost instantly at that level. So taking a look at the setup and starting with a loadout, you can use anything of your choice for your kinetic and energy weapon, but ideally you'll use a solar weapon if possible. If you want, you can use Ariana's Vow or the bow, but for this build, the exotic we'll be using is the Lament, but I will point out adjustments that you'll need to make if you plan on using other things. But ideally, you'll use solar weapons for the Font of Might mod to give us that extra DPS for matching our subclass. We'll get to these adjustments and setup shortly, but taking a look at the Lament, it does come with anti-barrier rounds built in, so that will cover all those champions for us. And it's still one of the best weapons for Boss DPS too. So the only other champion mods you'll need are either the Overload or Unstoppables with this build. But the exotic armor we're using is the Heart of Inmost Light, as this will enhance our solar abilities by surprisingly a fair amount actually. But your alternatives are Armentarium, the Path of Burning Steps, Symphoseps, or even Wormgod Caress. But with this build setup, to be the most effective, we're going with Heart of Inmost Light. More on this shortly, but I will also point out that you can make this build so powerful using a few different things to the point where your melee hammer insta-kills bosses, and I mean insta-kill. But this build is designed around all our abilities and solar weapons, so we won't be doing that for this build. So now moving into the subclass, we are running a Middle-Tree Sunbreaker, or Burning Maul, great for ad clearing, but we will get a throwing hammer that we can pick up to then throw again, and we can do this for an infinite amount of times, which is OP as hell with the mods and setup we're running. running, but this does come with Roaring Flames that stack ability damage up to 3 times, as well as Tireless Warrior, where picking up those hammers trigger health regen. But that's actually not all. You honestly have no idea how valuable this hammer is going to be, but the mods we'll be running are Lucent Blade as our Charger Light mod, which will give us extra damage with our sword, which stacks with other buffs, along with our Ammo Finder mods for our DPS weapon. If you're using Ariana's Vow, then use Hand Cannon Finder, otherwise use what your energy is along with your heavy. For our gauntlets, we are using Elemental Charge to become Charger Light when picking up those Elemental Wells, and we'll be picking up Solar Wells, so that will give us 2 stacks of Charger Light. And with this we have our champion mod or mods that you'll need, along with Grenade Kickstart, which really isn't needed, but it should help you get that grenade back slightly quicker. If you are having issues with getting your melee hammer back, then use melee kickstart instead. This does need to be slotted into stasis armor though. For our chest armor, we are using the exotic Heart of Inmost Light, and this reads, using an ability, grenade, melee or barricade, empowers the other 2 abilities. Empowered means abilities have faster regen, melee and grenades do more damage, and barricades have more HP. Now you can stack these damage buffs with each other nicely, and overall, with the solar weapons and build design itself, it really works smoothly together, as you will be chaining solar abilities and using elemental wells to enhance this build further, as our first elemental well mod is the melee well maker. Powered melee final blows, that being from our infinite hammers, will spawn a solar elemental well, and therefore making us Charger Light twice for our Lucent Blade mod or whatever Charger Light mod you decide to run with. With this mod we have our ammo reserve mods, and again, use the one that you need. For me, that's going to be the sword, so ignore the hand cannon one, as this is an example of using Ariana's or the Lament, but you'd run 2 of the same. Moving on to the leg armor, we have Font of Might, our second elemental well mod, where picking up those elemental wells will give us bonus damage to solar weapons. This is great with the Lament, as it stacks that 25% with Lucent Blade, along with any weakened debuffs, such as your solar abilities on champions, which means you can just melt champions down almost instantly in just a few swings. But with this mod, we do have our scavenger mod for a sword, or again, whatever weapon or weapons you are using. Lastly, for the class though, we have Fire and Ice, where defeating a champion spawns a random array of solar and stasis wells, along with our Overload melee mod, which means we can stun those Overload champions with our solar hammers. And the final mod is Withering Heat, which means causing damage with that solar ability will weaken the champion for a short duration. Perfect combination of mods this season for using the solar subclass as a whole. But next up though, for the stat, you want to max out that recovery for the quicker health regeneration rate when you pick up those hammers. But if you're always losing your hammers, then going with strength wouldn't be bad to get that melee ability back quicker. Now your alternative mods, if you're not wanting to use a sword and instead go with something else, then you'll want to replace Lucent Blade. A good alternative mod to use to support your allies would be Striking Light, as you will generate an orb of power for your team on every melee kill. And bear in mind that every melee kill you get another 2 stacks of Charger Light, so it's just an infinite loop of orbs, and you could even use multiple Charger Light mods due to that consistency of becoming Charger Light. But if you don't use the Lament as your focus for this build, then I'd recommend a Pulse Rifle or Bow as your kinetic for Overload champions or Unstoppables, and then an Ariana's Vow for your anti-barrier, which is also a solar weapon, so that will be given the extra DPS with the Font of Might mod slotted in. Your artifact setup is this if you guys wanted to see that, but one mod I actually want to point out is the Well of Potency mod, which I haven't actually unlocked yet, but if you want to play more of a fast super build, then perhaps this mod would be a good replacement to the Font of Might, as you'll be making wells infinitely anyway. But overall, I love this build, and it's actually one of my new favourite builds due to the fact of how powerful you can get those abilities. And with that buff to all the subclasses and exotics, it's definitely made this one pretty good and fun to use this season in Season of the Lost. But guys, that is all for this new build in Destiny 2 Season 15. Next, you guys should go check out the new playlist as always for more awesome top builds in Destiny 2. But for now, give this one a try and let me know what you think, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the next one.